Welcome to a very dark and very ominous sunrise safari. Its wind is howling, the clouds are here. Let's hope the big cats are on the hunt. This is Safari Live. Ready.
Standing by.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Hello and welcome to a wet, windy and cold sunrise safari. I've spotted some eyes. My name is Brent Smith. I have VM on camera and we don't know what is hiding in the grass. We can just see an eye at the distance and it is a antelope. Oh, it's an impala in the grass. Okay, sorry Impala. I was hoping you were going to be a porcupine or a civet or anything but an impala, but you are an impala. Hashtag Safari Live. Questions at WildEarthTV if you would like to send us any questions. As I said, it is dark, it is windy, it's wet, we have a roof on, and I'm hoping that the rain stays away. I don't think we were appreciative enough of the sunshine we had yesterday, so Mother Nature decided to send us some more wet and windy weather. I'm still ready for some sunshine. I could definitely use some. And it's starting to rain again now. But we do need the wet weather to help us through the long dry season. So we've headed west. Now the chances of us finding Tingana's tracks are quite slim, but we're having a look, because unless he caught something or decided to have a snooze while it was raining, all his tracks have been obliterated. So we're just going to head right up to the northwestern corner, and from there we're going to head east looking for the Nkahumas. And also hoping that maybe the Birmingham boys decided to come back from their little sojourn to the west. As I was saying a bit earlier, this is great cat weather. They're likely to be on the move, on the prowl. They're also likely to have possibly been able to make a kill or two last night, so we'll be checking carefully again in this weather. It's going to be a snail's paced safari, making sure we don't miss any tracks. So while we continue at snail's pace in the blustery wind, let's go to Jamie, who for once isn't getting wet. She's sitting in the tent.
Can you believe it? Brian and myself are safely tucked away in our safari tent. It's quite cozy in here, isn't it, Brian? It is. A very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the sunrise, in theory. I just wanted to show you exactly what is coming our way. It's nothing too disastrous, but just in terms of Tristan and his lack of a roof, there we are. That's sort of roughly where we are. Our GPS wasn't working terribly well, so I sort of plopped us on the map. It's not quite accurate, but that green dot is roughly where we are. And as you can see, some serious cloud coming in. It's not too bad, though. It looks as though the worst of it is skimming us off onto Mozambique. But there you go, once again, a cool and rainy safari for the two gentlemen on the vehicles. Well, actually, the four gentlemen on the vehicles. But the cameramen stay nice and tucked, except for Tristan's. Who's on camera with Tristan this morning, Brian?
Not too sure.
Not too sure. Whoever they are, they might get a little bit damp, whereas Brent's cameraman is going to be tucked away comfortably. It's Batman. It's Batman. Craig is potentially going to get a little bit damp. Right, so this morning in the tent, obviously, we have now pretty much covered everything. I don't think there is a single thing in this tent that has not been grappled with, poked, prodded, had a microscope placed into it, lit up, examined, and so on and so forth. So I think that we've covered the tent in great detail. But Marcel put up a message on our Safari Live Facebook page that I purely by accident just happened to see because I spend very little time, or attempt to spend very little time, on social media. But Marcel raised a very, very good point. We don't ever show rhino on our live safaris. We basically, whenever we see them, we drive past. They do exist here, but due to the poaching problem and as a stance, Wild Earth and the Safari Live team do not show rhino on our live safaris. And generally we don't talk about them either. We very seldom stop at the middens, at the tracks, because of course that is basically the same thing as potentially showing the rhino. They're one of the easiest animals to track out here. However, Marcel raised a very good point. I don't know if Marcel's watching, possibly not. I don't know where Marcel's from, but I'm sure that many of you feel exactly the same way, that perhaps whilst we might not be able to show them at this point, it would be really, really nice to talk about them. So although it's not International Rhino Day or anything like that, it's nothing special about this particular day, I thought that since we're sitting in the tent, Brian and myself don't really have anywhere to go, nothing much better to do. It's rainy and cold outside. Let's talk about rhino. And I'm talking about the facts, anything that you'd like to know. And just lay down one, not a ground rule, but just essentially, we're not going to harp on about the poaching seriousness. You all know that poaching is an issue. Unless you have any questions that you'd like to ask on it, we'll generally touch on it and then veer away and just talk about a little bit about their family structure, the two types of rhino that two species of rhino and their subspecies that we get in this area, and so on and so forth. So send through any rhino questions that you would like to ask. You could do that using the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter. Right, it's not just Brent and myself. Of course, Tristan has gone out without a roof. Let's go across to him and see if he's still feeling confident in that decision.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our sunrise safari. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Craig the Batman. Well, Jamie, I don't know how confident I am at the moment. I know you've shown everybody how big the cloud is, and from out here the cloud looks pretty big too. So it seems quite menacing and ominous, but we're going to try and ride our luck and see how we go, and see if maybe we get lucky and the rain will just stay off for our morning drive. We tried to risk it yesterday afternoon for the bushwalk, and we thought we were going to get rained out completely, and we didn't. In the end, it was actually okay. We could have stayed out, but let's hope that we had the same situation this morning and that we can persevere through without having to go back for our roof. Now, I believe Brent is going up into the northern side to go look for any signs of lions, and I'm sure he's going to keep a little eye out if Tingana's tracks are anywhere up there. I know he walked past the camp and was heading up in that direction last night. I am going to come down into the southern part of the reserve, and I'm looking for any signs of Karula and the cubs. I'm hoping that maybe she's come back from Arathusa, but I think that she maybe has a kill in Arathusa, and that is where she's actually going to be. I'm sure the tracks that Brent and Jamie had yesterday might be for her, so Michelle, you're wondering whether the cats are more out at night than in the morning. Well, Michelle, they tend to spend more time out in the dark of the night just because it's much better for them in terms of hunting. They have incredible eyesight. They have those whiskers that help detect vibrations in the grass. Very, very good sense of smell and hearing. And so when it turns dark or in conditions like this, it's much easier for them to hunt. They're able to then position themselves in ways that the prey animals can't see them as easily, and so that's why they tend to be a lot more active at night. Also, it's much cooler in the evenings than it is during the day, particularly in the summer months here. When it's summer here, it can be 120 or 40 degrees Celsius during the day, and so being a cat covered in fur, that's not very pleasant at all. So they tend to like to move rather in the cool of the night. It's much more comfortable for them. But things like leopard, everybody always thinks that they are nocturnal and they only move around at night. That's actually not true. Leopard is more a crepuscular animal. So when I say crepuscular, I mean that they move around more in dawn and dusk hours, so those few hours before the sun rises and a few hours after, and then the same with the sunset, and they're able to then do the height of their activity at that period, not so much during the night. In fact, there was a study that went out for a while about leopards, and they were saying that at night they actually spend a large portion of their time resting during the middle of the night. They don't move around too much. Most of their activity was, like I say, just after sunset or just before sunrise. And that is why we are doing our safaris at these times, to try and see if we can catch that activity before they settle down for the day. Now, conditions like we've got today with overcast, cloudy weather is going to be perfect for cats who have been hunting last night. When it's very, very dark like this and there's a bit of a wind and rain, it makes it much harder for the prey animals to smell, see, and hear what's going on. And so the cats use that to their advantage, and they've become very active in hunting during conditions like this. We've also just come out of a full moon phase, and during full moon it's much harder for the cats because it's a lot brighter. So now that it's going out of that, plus it's dark and dingy, really the cats are going to be focusing on hunting as much as possible. So I'm hoping that if we can at least try and find some sort of activity with the cats. So I just want to see these tracks here. It's for hyenas. If there's some sort of activity for them, that maybe they've got a carcass somewhere that they'll lead us to. So that's what I'm hoping. If that fails and we don't get any sign of the leopards, then I definitely think we're going to try and make a turn at the hyena den and go and see those cute little babies that we found yesterday. The girls are very excited, and we're very, very lucky. So Taylor and Jamie with their little hyenas. So I'm definitely going to go and try and see if I can find them a little bit later. It's a little bit dark for them now, and I don't want to put lights on at the den and maybe attract any other predator. So I'm going to just wait for it to get a little bit lighter before I head that way and go and have a look at those little ones. So, just Emra, is that right, Rebecca? Sorry, I'm battling a little bit with my comms, but you want to know whether the animals out here have different colored eyes at night. Well, there's different colors in terms of the reflection that comes back when we're using our spotlight. So I've stopped using it now because it's getting a little bit lighter, but if we're using our spotlight and it hits an animal's eyes, we'll get different reflection in terms of color coming back. So sometimes we get a green reflection and sometimes it's a red reflection. Now, there was a whole fallacy about red was for carnivores and green was for herbivores. That's not entirely true. When you get that red reflection coming back, it's often the nocturnal animals, so things like bush babies and the likes, and it's because they've got a huge amount of blood vessels in their eyes, and so you're getting that red reflection coming back at you. You'll find things like impalas and kudus and the likes, their eyes will reflect normally green back at you. Now I'm just checking at Treehouse Dam. This is a place that Karula and the cubs like to come to. If they don't have a carcass on Arathusa, then this would be a place that they could potentially come to. So I'm just having a little look to see what's going on. But it looks all very quiet and very still here. Maybe just turn off and have a little look. Now we should start to hear a couple of the birds coming out. There's what's known as the dawn chorus. So as the sun is about to rise, so you'll start hearing birds chirping. But it all is quite eerily quiet, other than the wind gusting. It's quite actually a moody morning this morning. It's one of those mornings where you'd probably want to rather be lying in bed than being out in the cold wind, but it does make for interesting game viewing, so it's always quite nice to be out in these conditions. So we're going to forge ahead and see what else we can find, and while we do that, let's go see how Brent's lion search is going.
What birds, Tristan? What birds? All I can hear is blustering wind. Now, it feels like we're on the set of a disaster movie at the moment. Cloud cover, low and ominous, wind howling. Will Steph's great deluge ever arrive? But, as I said, if we can find cats in this weather, it's really good weather for them. They'll be, if they're not full, they're going to be highly mobile, and Not that I ever wish the Nkuhumas bad hunting, but I hope they had bad hunting last night and they're just waiting for us to arrive to leap on the back of a buffalo. Oh, but so far no sign of any tracks, no sign of anything except for that lone Impala that we saw when it was still dark. Now, the other thing is that all the big cats, males and territorial cats like leopards, should be scent marking their way around to try scent mark on top of the rain, because obviously all that scent's been washed away. So that's what Mr. Tingana was up to yesterday. So on the northern boundary here, we might have a chance at Djuma. Oh, foul weather. Always feels like something nefarious is afoot in this weather. Oh. I'm just listening to an update from Cheetah Plains. No update apart from a single buffalo. Now I keep staring down the road hoping to spot a lion in the distance, but so far just a patch of mud. Now we're going to keep looking for an animal we can see. While we do that, let's go to Jamie to talk about one we can't.
Absolutely, a lovely opportunity to talk about what we can't see at this particular point in time. Gosh, it looks miserable out there. It really, really does. It looks absolutely freezing. The wind is howling. The wind's howling through the tent. Brian and myself have made the executive decision to keep the back closed. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be helping, though. The wind is gusting through. Now, Dina, you want to know about the gestation period. Okay, let's first go into the two species that we see, and we'll go into that in greater depth a little bit later in terms of the differences between the two. So we see the white rhino, so the square-lipped rhino, and then we get the hook-lipped or the black rhino. Much rarer to see out here, but we do get them. The last time I saw one, it was hanging upside down from a helicopter during one of our TV shows as it was being transported somewhere else to safety. I don't know exactly what was happening, but it was a truly, truly bizarre moment, wasn't it, Brian? It really was. We all of us sort of saw it at different times. As Steph was on walk, we were sitting with Xongile and glanced up, and VM zoomed right in, and there was this black rhino hanging upside down. Live black rhino. That's how they often transport them when they're rushing to do something like that. Right, so gestation period is just under about 1.5 years. So you're looking at between 15 or 16 months for both species. A white rhino is sometimes a little bit shorter. Again, much like all of our mammals, that's a rough estimate. Oh, my drawings fell down. It's all right. We'll get back to that later. So you're looking at a sort of a roughly just under 1.5 years. Once the calf is born for both black rhino and white rhino, it then stays with its mother for roughly 1.5 years or so. And around about that point, the female comes back into estrus. So Shrimp Monster, you were wondering about how long the calves will stay with their mums. It's a very complicated time in a little rhino calf's life. They form very tight bonds with their mothers, and for the first few weeks of their life, mom keeps every other rhino away. Then she gets more social and she accepts other rhinos back together, and they form their little group, which is called a crash of rhinos. So there you go. So they'll form their little group. There you go, Laurie. We're just smashing out these questions now. Laurie, there you go. A group of rhino is a crash. It's also sort of a herd, but it's the proper collective noun is a crash. Once the female comes back into estrus, that's when it gets really complicated for the little calf, because All of a sudden, a male rhino arrives on the scene, doesn't particularly appreciate the presence of the calf, particularly young male calves, and will chase them away regularly from their mom. And of course, all they want to do is come back to their mom, and they get very confused and look very lost and spend a lot of time making the most amazing sounds. Rhino make the best sounds in the world. They sound like dolphins or whales. They sort of... It's amazing to watch. Anyway, that was a terrible impression of a rhino. Absolutely appalling. Once the female then... Once the female then gives birth, she will then kick out her other calf, which is deeply traumatic, and will only let it rejoin once that little calf has grown up a little bit. Let's go and find out what Tristan's found. It sounds fascinating.
Indeed, Jamie, we've bumped into a buffalo bull. Now, it's been a while since I've seen a buffalo bull on Djuma, so this is a very welcome sight. It's hopefully going to help answer Brent's conundrum of lions. Having them back around would always be a good sign, and lions, obviously the Nkahuma Pride and the Birminghams are very, very favorite. Well, they like buffalo. They think that that's their best food, so if they're around, then hopefully the lions will start thinking about coming back. Now you can see he has parked himself off in a little muddy wallow, so he's having a nice rest, and this is very, very common behavior for a buffalo in weather like this. When it's very dark and dingy, would have fed yesterday afternoon, and they've now found themselves a place to lie during the dark of the night where they feel somewhat safe. So it's got this termite mound behind it, and there's this muddy wallow where it's just probably staying nice and cool, and then there's a big open section that it can see around it, so it will lie down and be able to regurgitate balls of grass, because it's a ruminant, so it's like a cow, and it'll be able to chew on that food and be able to still watch what's going on at night. If it was something like an elephant, it would battle, because it would have to keep feeding all the way through the night to sustain itself, and when its head is down and it's feeding, it's making a lot of noise and not concentrating on what's going on, and becomes much more susceptible to predation. So lying down like this and being able to ruminate is a great way of staying a little bit safer. And this buffalo is probably loving this weather. With all the rain that we've had, it's created these little shallow depressions everywhere where there's mud, and it is perfect for a buffalo. You can even see, look how content he looks. Now, buffalo generally are quite grumpy when they look at you. They look like they have this scowl on their face, but that is the happiest looking buffalo I have seen in a long time. Besides all the appendages that he has all over him, which are the oxpeckers that are busy flittering about and going up his ears and nose, he does look very smitten with life, doesn't he? Is that nice, buddy? I think he's quite enjoying the oxpeckers at this stage, as long as they don't go right into the ear. It must be quite nice for them just to bounce around and pull off all those little ticks. Look at the eyes now. You can see he's almost closing them as to say that, ooh, that's the spot. You're hitting the spot. Very cool. Right, and we know he's a male just because of his horn structure. You can see he's got a big helmet-like structure on top of his head. If there was a female, she wouldn't have that. She would have a hairy top with very undefined horns on top. So we know that he's a boy. Also, look at the size of that neck area. It is huge. Now, this buffalo is actually not an old buffalo. You can tell by his ears. His ears are actually in perfect condition. So it's one of the signs you can use for aging buffalo. Generally, when a buffalo starts to get a little bit older, its ears become very, very tatty and worn, whereas this guy's ears are in good condition. Even his boss and his horns don't have too many chips or cuts out of them or little dents. So he is in great condition, and it's so nice to see healthy buffalo again after the drought that we had last year. It was terrible to see the condition of some of these buffalo. They were all skin and bone and really not looking healthy at all, whereas this guy looks great. His muscular structure around his neck and shoulders is massive, and you can also see around his hip area that it's nice and round. There's no bones protruding out there. We're not seeing the ribs like we were seeing last year. So Nita, welcome to the show. I hope you're enjoying it so far, and we look forward to having you on board. You want to know how much a buffalo weighs? Well, a big male buffalo like this could easily weigh close to 2,000 pounds. So they weigh about 800 kilograms, which is very, very heavy. You can imagine that that's 2,000 pounds of just pure muscle, and there's quite a bit of aggression in there, so it makes them a very difficult target. You find that lions really are the only ones that can target big buffalo like this. There are reported cases of funny things like honey badger and wild dogs killing big buffalo bulls, but it's because, unfortunately for them, that they have a rather large scrotum, and that makes them a little bit susceptible to those smaller animals because they grab one there and then they suffer from blood loss. I've actually seen a pride of lions that work that out, and that's how they used to kill the buffalo. Rather than risking going anywhere near those big horns, they used to go try and get it from behind, and then they would try and rip off the genitals of the male and then leave him to suffer from blood loss, and then go and pull him down from the back once he was weakened and start to feed on him without having to even suffocate or go anywhere near the horns, which was quite gruesome, but it was quite effective. It was amazing actually to see how quickly the buffalo went down once they were able to do that. But yeah, they weigh about 2,000 pounds, and like I say, they're quite a big, solid animal and very, very, very powerful. I had an incident where the lions were hunting a buffalo bull, and it was at night, and there was a guide that was with me, and we were following the lions through this thicket, and these buffalo appeared in front of us, and this buffalo, the lions started to chase the buffalo, and they started chasing way away from us, so we just sat tight, and all of a sudden they turned, and obviously what had happened is another lion had looped around, and the buffalo then got chased back towards us, and one of the other guides I was with got a bit panicked, and he started to drive, and he put his lights on. And when you're following hunting lions with buffalo, you never put your lights on, because the buffalo will run straight at the lights to be able to see what's going on. They know that if they can see that area in front of the lights, that it's safe, there's no lions there, they're going to go there, and inevitably what's behind the light is your vehicle, so they then come pounding into your vehicle. And so this guy made that mistake, and this buffalo plowed into the side of the car, and it was like a massive impact, a T-boning effect as this buffalo hit the side of the car. The tracker fell off the front, there was lions everywhere, buffalo everywhere, and the tracker then ran towards our car and jumped on. Luckily, it was quite a scary image to see this tracker running with lions and buffalo behind him, and he was quite a big tracker, and I remember him running faster than I ever thought his legs could move. It was funny in hindsight, but at the time it was quite a scary thing. And that buffalo hit the side of the car, so much so that in a Land Rover you have an impact protection. So basically what happens if you're in a big car accident, it just shuts the whole car off, so that if there is any leaking fuel, it doesn't catch fire, and the car then goes up in flames. And the impact from that buffalo was enough to cause that to happen. And the funny thing about it was the buffalo bounced off the car at full speed. It hit and bounced off, and then it just carried on running as though nothing had happened. So it just gives you an idea of how strong they are in those shoulder and neck areas, and how effective that horn structure is when they put their head down. And funny enough, the lions actually didn't even catch it. Even though it smashed into a car, the lions got such a fright with the impact that they hesitated, and the buffalo then got away, and that was the end of that. But it was quite a sighting, that's for sure. So, Lauren, that's an interesting one. You want to know whether I'd rather run into a buffalo or a rhino on foot. Well, I can tell you right now, I would rather run into a rhino every single day of the week than run into a buffalo. Buffaloes are really grumpy animals. They tend to lie in dense, thick areas, and you often can just stumble upon them without knowing that they were even there. And they are one of these animals that, unlike the rhino, that will often indicate that it's upset, and they will huff and puff and make a lot of noise. The buffalo will just sit deadly quiet and wait for you to come and then explode out of the bush. So they are quite nasty in that regard, and that's why they're part of the Big Five. The Big Five was actually the 5 most dangerous animals to hunt way back in the day, and the buffalo is probably the most notorious of those, and so a really, really aggressive animal, and not one you want to bump into at all. In fact, I think of all the animals out here, I've been chased more by buffalo than anything else. The nice thing about buffalo is that they can't climb, and they're not the tallest animals, so as long as you can find a tree relatively close by, you just hop up into the tree and the buffalo run around and try and sniff you out. And I've had this instance where I was chased up a tree and the buffalo sat at the bottom of the tree and would not leave until a vehicle eventually came and managed to chase it away, and we could then climb down and get into the vehicle and get out of there. The other thing about a rhino is that it tends to, as long as the wind is in your favor and that you're very, very quiet, its eyesight is not the best. And so you can often be quite close to a rhino and it doesn't even know that you're there. Whereas buffalo tend to have very keen eyesight. You can see they've got those big ears that catch a lot of sound and a very good sense of smell. So sneaking up on them is a little bit tougher than sneaking up on a rhino. So I would definitely rather walk into rhinos any day of the week. But you can see him chewing there, so that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with regurgitating and chewing. So those are balls of grass that he would have fed on probably yesterday afternoon, that he's now bringing up from his 4-chambered stomach and re-chewing and getting all the nutrients out of that grass. So he's maximizing every little bit of nutrients he can and making sure that he's completely full and happy and healthy. So Michelle, that's exactly what we're talking about. So he is a ruminant, which is a multi-compartment stomach. There's 4 compartments to that stomach. So he is exactly like a cow or a bovine. And in fact, buffalo come from the bovine family, so they're exactly the same. And a lot of our animals out here it's mostly the prey animals that have it. And the reason is because, like I was saying, is that these guys at night, when the predators are very, very active, like what we were talking about earlier with the cats. They will spend time being able to sit with their heads up and watching what's going on, but still gaining nutrients. So rather than being head down and feeding all through the night when it's the most dangerous time for them, they are able to find an area where they can lie down in a relatively open section and still be able to gain nutrients by filling up those stomachs and then being able to regurgitate and maximize the nutrients that they get out of the pieces of grass that they feed on. So it's a very, very clever system for most of our prey animals, and Impala, kudu, buffalo, they've all got it. So there's a very, very common pattern amongst them. But I think we're going to leave this buffalo now. We're going to leave him to his morning spa. I wonder if he's not also lying there because the termite mound behind him is blocking where the wind is coming from. So the wind is actually coming from that direction, so it might be a perfect place to lie. Alright, so we're going to carry on, and while we do that, let's go back to Brent and see if maybe he's got any signs of the lions that hunt these buffalo.
Well, it's I'm 99.9999999% sure that the lions are still to the north of us. There's not a scratch of them crossing. So we're heading east now along Cheetah cut line, and interesting that quarantine was left not too far from here last night, but he does go into Torchwood often. He hasn't been back on Djuma in many moons, but we will check carefully for tracks. As I said, we're going on no, hyena. We're going on the sort of very slow safari this morning, just idling along, making sure we don't miss any tracks. So while we idle along here, it's miserable, and the wind has got more. You can actually just see all the grass waving about. But while we wander along here, wait, sorry, 1 second, I keep getting distracted by the same hyena track. While we wander along here, I think it's time for a quiz. What quiz are we going to do today? There's a very good chance that we're going to be wandering to the north of South Africa this year. So I think we're going to see how much you guys know about animals that don't live in South Africa. Okay, so I think we'll start our first quiz. I think we're going to do a few quizzes in this weather today, unless we find some nice fresh tracks, or even better, some cats. What is the biggest antelope that occurs in the Mara? What is the biggest antelope that occurs in the Mara Triangle? If you know the answer, hashtag Safari Live or questions at WildEarthTV. What is the biggest antelope that occurs in the Masai Mara? Okay, I think that's a good one. What do you think, Vim? Vim, you think you know the answer?
I think it's going to be a trick one.
Yeah, Vim thinks I'm being tricky this morning. He thinks it's going to be a trick one. Oh, we'll have to wait and see, though. So I think we're gonna do some quizzes on animals that live outside of South Africa today, or more particular areas outside of South Africa. Oh, dearie me, this weather is vile. Of course, there's always a chance that the lions have gone into Torchwood and then come back. Now, we're going to keep idling down the eastern boundary. While we do that, let's go back to Jamie to talk about an animal that there are very few of outside of South Africa.
Alright, let us continue with our rhino conversation, since the weather outside is gloomy, but it doesn't have to be gloomy in the tent. Although I really struggled to draw anything this morning because it is so unbelievably dark. First of all, I owe you an apology. I'm sorry. I got distracted. I thought Rebecca said that the buffalo was stuck in the mud. So that's why I was totally distracted. I should have properly finished clarifying. The female comes into estrus. The female rhino comes into estrus at about a year, and when the calf is about a year and a half old. She's then pregnant with the next one for another year and a half. So a rhino calf will stay with its mother for 3 years. It is dependent upon its mother for 3 years before its sibling is born and it's booted out for a while. Then, after a few weeks, she'll actually let her calf come back, and she may even, if it's a female, she may end up hanging out with it for the rest of that calf's life. Maybe, probably not all the way, but around there. And they do live for about 40 years, so they do live for quite a long time. So there you go. Bethany was wondering about whether they gather in breeding groups, bachelor groups. So the structure, it's a funny thing. There was always this fallacy that black rhino, and we'll get into the differences in a moment. I've drawn up a whole table of differences. There's always this fallacy that black rhino are incredibly antisocial and solitary, whereas white rhino are not. The more we see, the more we know about their behavior and the fact that they actually have a very similar structure to white rhino. They might not be as gregarious, but they certainly spend a lot of time together in groups. The important thing to remember is that rhinos don't have a set structure. It changes depending on the situation and what's going on around them. What you'll often find is a series of, or a pair of females, or even more, together with their offspring. And that can be the current offspring and the previous generation gathered together. So I've seen crashes of up to 6-7 rhino gathered together. Then you get the territorial bulls, and they become territorial at around about 8 years old. They start to mark their territory, show signs of dominance, fighting other males for territorial rights and females. They have a territory that encompasses that of the females. The females don't really have a territory. They have a home range. They move about. They don't have they don't mark their territories at all. They defecate in middens, but that's like rhino Facebook. It's their way of communicating with each other. It's not a territorial marking, whereas for the males, it is. So the males will have a territory. They will allow sub-adult males within their territory, even if they're not related to them. It doesn't bother them, provided they are showing no sign of dominance. As soon as they start to urine spray or urine scent mark, scrape, then they will actually start to push them out, and they'll have to go and establish their own territory. They often hang out with the females, and what you'll often find is you do get bachelor groups, but usually it's just male offspring that have been booted out from their mum and have joined together because they actually just feel comfortable being in a group. They get scared on their own, like elephants in a way. Alright, so just quickly, white rhinoceros. Obviously the story about a white rhinoceros getting its name, supposedly from the Dutch word wide, wide-mouthed rhinoceros. So that actually, once you remember that, it pretty much explains almost everything here. So they're larger. They are close to and over 2 tons in the case of a big rhino bull. I once went on a rhino darting to transfer him away from a place where he was at high risk of being poached, and you walk them once they're sort of semi-sedated, you walk them blindfolded into the crate to move them away. And I'm 5'7", and I was helping him, pushing up against his shoulder with my great strength to guide him. And he was about this tall at the shoulder. So they're a lot bigger than they can get a lot bigger than you think they can. They're absolutely massive. So up to 2 tons, whereas the black rhino doesn't really get over around about 1.3, maybe 1.4. In really exceptional cases. I've met one once who was 1.4. His name is Cheetah, and he's angry. He was a very, very angry black rhino. Not all of them are, but he was a particularly angry black rhino. So because they're grazers, white rhino hold their heads down most of the time. Obviously, they're lifted up if they're looking at something, but most of the time, their natural position is down. Speaking from experience, that head is heavy. So as a result, they've got quite well-developed shoulders and quite a large hump, almost a hunchback on their shoulders, whereas black rhino don't really have that. They've got a slightly more agile shape and a slightly more curved back. Square-lipped because they eat grass. It makes sense for cropping, same as a hippopotamus, just cropping the grass. Hook-lipped because black rhino are browsers. They chew on twigs and leaves and trees and so on. That means their dung looks completely different, it smells completely different. Very characteristically, they bite at a 45-degree angle. So when you find a plant that's been fed on by a black rhino, it's got perfect 45-degree angles on the little branches. The white rhino's ears slightly more elongated, the black rhino's slightly rounder, but now we're getting into real semantics. And then, the funny one, I always love this, the calf runs behind in a black rhino and in front in the white rhino. And when I was a small child, the thing that really inspired me to love the bush was rhino. I always thought it was because black rhinos were strict to mums, that they were more strict with their calves and therefore they were forced to run behind their mothers and not in front. It's because it's to do with their habitat. So it's to do with the fact that the black rhino will run through thick vegetation, so the calf has to follow mum, whereas the white rhino will run through open spaces, which will allow it to be directed. It can run ahead. Mom can put herself between the threat and her baby and guide it with her horn. James, you want to know how white rhino and black rhino tracks differ? A black rhino track is a large male is still smaller than that of a cow. A white rhino cow. So there's a distinctive difference to the size of them. I'm going to try and draw one for you. Oh, just quickly because these diagrams need explaining. This is the profile of a white rhino. Their secondary horn is quite short. In black rhino, the secondary horn often grows to almost the same size as the primary horn. Okay, quickly tracks. Let me try and do this. You know what I'm like with artistry. So a track. These are quite elongated, and you've got quite a distinct back pad. So that's white rhino, 3 toes, 1, 2, 3. These side toes are quite large. A black rhino is much, oh goodness, the wind's blowing, no, stay still. Black rhino. The side toes are slightly smaller. That was not the best drawing I've ever done, but the side toes are smaller and slightly further away from the main toe. That wasn't the best drawing I've ever done. I've got exciting news for you though, from an animal we can't show to an animal we all love. Let's go and see how Tristan's doing.
Yes, exciting indeed, Jamie. We came to where you left them last night, and there you can see Karula is standing waiting for us. She was just sitting on the side of the road, and she is calling quite a bit, so I think she's looking for the cubs. Now, interestingly enough, it looks like she's got a little gash under her eye. It doesn't look too bad, and it will definitely is healing already, but she's got this little black line under her eye at the moment. She looks like one of those NFL footballers. She's got this kind of black marking rather than the normal white that you see. Now, she's going into quite a dense area, so we're going to try and step in here. I'm quite glad we didn't do the roof, because it would have been difficult with the roof in this area, but so, sorry, I believe we had a bit of a break up there. We are on Arathusa now, so sometimes the area that we're in, right up against these drainage lines, can sometimes be a little bit difficult with signal, but hopefully it will all be okay. But like I was saying, she's mobile through a thick area, so not having the roof is going to work in our favor here. Ah, there we go, there's another one. So there's one cub. It looks like Hosana. I don't see any sign of Xongile just yet, but Hosana is definitely there. You can see he's on the right of Karula there, and he's actually bigger than she is. When he stands up, he's taller. There comes little Xongile now. Just a bit to your left, Craig. There we go, and we're going to get a meeting of all of them together. Look at that, isn't that amazing? So Mom has obviously been out hunting, and the cubs have now been called, and I wonder if she maybe doesn't have a kill. It'll be interesting to see where she goes now. But look at how they rub up on her just to reaffirm that bond, and typical Hosana fashion, shoving his bum in his mom's face. That's how he likes to let Mom know that he's happy to see her. Shame she gets a bit bullied by him these days because he's so big. He's managing to push them around. Alright, so I'm just going to let some of the other game drive vehicles know. Amant. Yeah, I don't seem to have comms with anybody else, but if you can just let everybody know, Karula and the two cubs are mobile east at the moment, just south of Jay's link towards Triple M Gari main junction. Alright, so unfortunately it looks like they're about to cross into a property that we can't go into. So this is our southern boundary here, so we might have just bumped into them at the perfect time. And I'm sure that she's... Swapna, you're asking if I saw the wound on her neck. Yes, I did. I would imagine it's the same incident that caused the wound on her underneath her eye. Now, they don't look too fresh. There's definitely a little bit of sign of healing already. So maybe it's been in the last couple of days while they've been in Little Gari. I'm not sure exactly what's happened to her. I haven't heard of any fights. And there you can see Hosana is actually scent marking, which is quite interesting now. Any other male that comes along here is going to not be that impressed that a young male is scent marking in their territory, so he's going to have to be a little bit careful. I think he'll still be lucky that Mom is scent marking in that area. Now, like I say, they're busy crossing into an area that we can't drive in, but what I'm going to try to do is just go parallel with them and just see if they're not going to pop out back on our side. I have a sneaky feeling that they might have a kill somewhere close by here. Morning, Amant, how are you?
Good, and you, man?
Very well, sorry, but I'm branding you there. I'll speak to you now.
Alright.
But wherever they're going, Karula is on a serious mission. She's very mobile. I can see them just through here, so they're walking parallel with us, which is great news, and it looks like they're going to angle back towards this road, so it looks like they're going to pop out right in front of us, which is perfect. I'm just going to try and keep visual on them together. Can you believe it? In the 4 weeks I've been with Safari Live, I've seen Karula and Xongile, I've seen Karula and Hosana, I've seen Xongile and Hosana, but never all three of them together. So I'm so excited to see all of them. They really are quite incredible, and especially now that they've gotten so big, it's seeing 3 leopards together like this is something quite amazing. She's definitely had a little altercation with somebody, because that cut underneath her eye is quite obvious. She looks like a little bit like Mike Tyson at the moment, a big swollen eye, and I think she'll be perfectly fine. So, Michael, you want to know, is it possible that they had an altercation with Shadow last night? And if they came across Shadow's cubs unattended, what would they do? Well, it is very possible that they came across Shadow last night. The wound itself doesn't look like it's happened recently. I don't know if Jamie, when she saw her last night, if she had this cut underneath the eye. We'll have to ask Jamie just to confirm for us. But if she did have a fight with Shadow, I mean, it is possible. She was in Shadow's territory. It could have been a multitude of other leopards as well. There's been lots of young females that have been around the Arathusa area. There's been that Ingrid young female, and I believe Jamie says she didn't actually see her face properly, but that looks to me like a wound that's not from today. But I would imagine if it was Shadow, there would be... Maybe that's why she's mobile so quickly away from this area. It could have been. Now, in terms of the cubs, if Karula had come across the cubs unattended, it's possible that she would have killed them. I don't know. I've never really seen female cubs attacking little cubs. It is possible. You never know with these kind of animals, but I've never actually seen it personally where a cub gets attacked by another cub. So, another female. It's normally the males that are the problem. Now, you can see she's actually going to the toilet there, and that's because she's got very full belly. She's had a good meal in the last few days, and so that's the consequences of that good meal. You can't even go to the toilet in peace with cubs around, by the looks of it. But the cubs both look good and healthy, so they didn't have an altercation with whatever Karula had an altercation with. So they are moving slowly but surely eastwards down the main road here. They're heading towards Shabam Road and Zoe's Road, so hopefully they're going to go up and into that area. So what I'm going to do is, because there's some other commercial vehicles with us, I'm going to just pull over and let them get a chance. They've been sitting patiently behind us while Karula went to the loo. And the nice thing is that this is a really big open section, so what we can do is we can go up like Jamie did yesterday on the side, and we can follow them and they can follow behind us, and we won't have too many problems. But isn't that spectacular to see the three of them? You can see Karula's not limping in any way, so whoever she did have this little scrap with has not affected her, and like I said, those wounds are really superficial, so she's going to recover no problem from those wounds. So like I say, I'm just going to go up onto the verge here so that the vehicle behind us gets a chance to see them. Sweet history, you're wondering... Oh, sorry, I got a bit sidetracked. The smell of leopard urine is in the air, and that smells like warm, buttery popcorn. And on a morning like this, it's actually quite a pleasant smell, funny enough. You want to know how long it will take for these wounds to heal on a leopard. Well, there's a lot of factors that influence that. It's whether or not she's good at grooming herself and keeping the wound nice and clean. But generally quite fast. You'd be very surprised to see how quickly these cats can heal. They are extremely resilient, and so I would imagine within a week or two you'd hardly really notice that one on the neck particularly, and the one underneath the eye, I don't know, maybe a little bit longer than that, but it really won't be too long until it's healed up and looks normal again. So unfortunately for a little bit she's going to look like a street bruiser, but it will heal up. I just can't get over how big Hosana is. He's massive in comparison to her. Now, I checked all of this area this morning when we were looking for them, and there was no sign of her walking this way. So often if they have a carcass, they'll walk back the way that they came from, and I didn't see any tracks. It was just the tracks from last night, so I wonder which way she came from. Shannon, you want to know if big cats will look after each other when they are sick and injured? Not really. It depends on how bad it is. I mean, I have seen with lions injured animals that get to survive because the rest of the pride is catching food, and that animal's able to get to the food and feed and be able to get nutrients to start getting better. But in terms of actually looking after them and babying them, unless it's a mother with her cub, then no, not really. I've never seen a pride of lions actively stay in one area for really extended periods of time and hunt and then not feed and wait for this injured animal to arrive before they feed. I've never really seen that. It's more a case of either you can keep up or you can't. In leopards, it's only time you're ever going to see a scenario like this where you've got three leopards together is when you have a mother with cubs. It's very seldom that leopards are going to walk around together as a group of adults, and so they normally on their own, which means nobody's going to look at them but themselves. In terms of the cubs though, you will find that that female will probably stay very close, and she'll make sure she catches food and gets that one to eat and gets the nutrients that it needs. Oh, Hosana, you are scent marking everywhere, my boy. It's amazing to actually see how much he has been marking his territory. I think he's more just being influenced by his mother at this stage, so he's seeing his mom do it, and that's very typical of cats. They learn from their mothers, so like they'll learn how to hunt and learn how to be a leopard. He's watching his mom scent mark, and so now he's doing the same. Now what I'm going to try to do is just try and get ahead of them a little bit and see if maybe we can just get them all walking down the road towards us, which will be quite nice. But isn't that amazing to see? Morning, everyone. Sorry, Rebecca, you just cut out. If you can just go again with that. Alright, so we're going to follow them for a little bit and see where they take us. Hopefully it's to food. And while we do that, let's go across to Brent, who I believe has got some of the items they like to hunt.
Yes, those Impala are very happy that they're very far away from the royal family. And we made our way onto Chitwa on our way through. Oh, Viam, there's a bird we don't see very often, that tiny little one there. Ha! A dabchick, or a little grebe. I'm sure that's a new one for quite a lot of birders. A dabchick or a little grebe. Now, where have you come from? Very pretty little birds. That is the first one I've seen here. Amazing. Little aquatic bird that dunks. It's called a dabchick, obviously, because it likes to dab under the water. So they actually go fully under the water while they're feeding. Oh, that is so cool. Isn't that awesome? That's a lovely new bird. Now, in this cold, windy weather, even the hippos are going to be quite low down. Of course, it's going to be much warmer for them to stay in the water than it is for them to move out of the water. Hello, hippos. So we've got Impala, hippo, oh, and a waterbuck. Oh, what are you doing? Off. Now, Lydia, who's 6 years old, says, "Are you cold here?" Oh, there's the waterbuck. Yes, Lydia, we are quite cold, but what we think is cold is probably different from what you think is cold. For us, 70 degrees Fahrenheit is cold, which is about 20 degrees Celsius. There we go, 23 degrees Celsius, 73 Fahrenheit. The hippos also think it's cold, so they're keeping low in the water. Oh, what was that behind? A little three-banded plover behind the hippos. But I'm just excited we got to see that dabchick. A lovely new bird species. If that's a new bird for you, let me know. Hashtag Safari Live. Well, Michael's already there. That's bird 120 on Michael's list. The little grebe or dabchick. So wonderful. Even the wet, windy weather provides us with surprises. Yeah, well, other than that, not much else happening here at the Waterhole. We're going to keep heading towards the east, maybe make it all the way to Cheetah Plains and see what's happening there. Mandy is wondering, do impala have a scent that let other impala know their status? Well, with the females, they're pretty much all of equal status. With the males, there we go. That's the way most of things are sorted out, by fighting. But they do scent mark, and they do, especially during the rutting season, which is coming up. But they do have a scent. But most of the hierarchical debates are sorted out by a good old-fashioned boxing match between the males. Oh wow! Here comes a wind. There's a bit of a goose war going on as well, but we can't really see it. It's happening just below us. I actually saw a goose dive under the water. Oh, our rain covers are blowing up and attacking VM. Sorry, VM. Bad rain cover. Okay. Well, I said we're going to move on. Well, very well done to Jay, Daniel, and Nikki. You are spot on. The largest mammal or antelope species that occurs in the Mara Triangle is indeed the eland. So hopefully we'll be seeing some of those in not too long. Okay, let's move on. So while we go see what we can find in the east, let's go back to the west and the royal family.
So it seems that Karula is now taking a turn back onto Djuma, which is great news. And they've just stopped for a little bit, and you can see there's a bit of a grooming session going on. Little Xongile went and had a little sniff around, and Karula's busy giving Hosana a nice groom around his ears, making sure that he's all clean. There we go. You can see Hosana is quite excited, so I'm pretty sure that he thinks Mom has come to call them for food, and that's why he's running along. But you can see him scent marking. Xongile hasn't got the whole scent marking thing down pat yet. She's not quite into that. But Hosana is definitely, wherever he goes, he's rubbing his face, lifting his tail, squirting urine. So really, really interesting to see how he's doing it. I think he's going to get himself into a bit of trouble at some stage. Like I say, I'm sure Tingana and the likes won't take kindly to him scent marking everywhere. But I'm just going to reverse with them so that they've got a place to go. Sorry, girls. Otherwise we're going to block their road, so I just want to get out of the road for them a little bit. But they've just turned round now because their mom has just cut north into this bushy area here. Oh, there she comes. So, pretty sure they're going to just come past us. And like I say, the road where we are now is quite a twisty turny road, so we're going to let them come past and rather follow them from behind than reverse with them. On big straight roads it's quite nice to be able to reverse. Isn't that amazing to have all three of them within touching distance of the vehicle? Incredible. It's always the best thing when leopards come walking past like that. It's my favorite thing. So that's really, really fortunate. Just got to be a bit careful here with our aerial and the trees that are around. Oh, Hosana is busy chasing some francolins there, which has led Karula to go chase them as well. And now little Xongile is also running down the road. Not a good morning if you're a francolin. Let's see if they went up on the termite mound here. I don't know where Hosana disappeared to, but he went chasing after those francolins. You can see Karula's not interested at all. She's worked out that this is not something she needs to worry about. There it is. You can hear the squeaking of the francolins. They're very unimpressed. Alright, so I believe we've broke up a little bit again. I'm sorry, the weather doesn't help at all when we're trying to broadcast these things around the world. It does happen from time to time, so hopefully the weather will lift and it will allow us to get our pictures sorted again. I'm so happy that they're back in with us on Djuma. It makes life really that much better. It's great to have them here. It's been a while. They've spent the better part of this week on Little Gowrie, and when they went towards Arathusa last night, I was a little bit hesitant because Arathusa is a lot busier than what Djuma is, and so being able to spend quality time with them is really not as easy as it is here on Djuma. We're so fortunate on Djuma that there's a lot less vehicles, and it allows us to spend long periods with them. Alright, so we're going to carry on following them. I'm sure that they're going to take us somewhere interesting. So while we do that, let's go back to Jamie in the warm tent.
From one festive leopard sighting to one festive leopard skull. Actually, that sounds a bit macabre. That sounds terrible, I'm sorry. We'll continue with our rhino discussion. But before we go on to that, I just wanted to say I've seen leopards stalking, not stalking to kill, to hunt and kill, but stalking for fun. I've seen them stalk rhino before. And there's often sightings you don't realize, because obviously we've got quite good, and our camera operators are quite good at hiding rhino from you. But we have had many sightings with leopard and rhino combined, haven't we, Brian?
Yeah.
You must have had a few. And you see the poor camera operators trying to duck and dive. I had one particular wild dog sighting where they started chasing 3 rhino, and there was nothing we could do. We couldn't explain to Final Control that there were rhino in the site. Eventually we did. I think James eventually did, just because it was starting to go. It was turning into a farce. The two of us switching between vehicles, trying to explain why we were not with the dogs when it was... I think my particular highlight was when I said, oh, they're going into a place where we probably can't off-road to follow them, and 2 vehicles went vroom around me and after them. You just sit there going, oh no, oh dear. Sometimes they photobomb us as well. They'll just pop out of nowhere, or you drive around the corner and all of a sudden there's a rhino there. Driving through an undisclosed location, we were looking for lions, we'd been talking about vultures, I think, and there was a rhino in the road. As I came up the dip, there was just this bottom straight in front of me, and I went, oh, look at the vultures that aren't there but could be there. The camera's swinging wildly. So we've had some very entertaining times avoiding rhino, which is sad, but at the same time we have to laugh at it because it is what it is. I've got a special treat for you. I can't do the rhino sound very well, so I'm going to play it for you, and I'll have to do this in the sort of really basic way by putting my phone up to my microphone, so sorry about this. But here you go. This is what rhinos sound like. Cute. I love this sound. So this is a calf begging sound, but this is what they sound like regularly. Sounds like a whale or a dolphin or something like that, doesn't it? Fascinating sound. Yes, cuties. You're so sweet. Now, Michael, you want to know if our 2 species will ever interbreed. Michael, no, they don't. They're actually very far removed, our white rhino and our black rhino. They suspect, just through studying their DNA and through various biological research that's happened with the various rhino species, they suspect that the black rhino, as we know it, is probably one of the newest rhino species that we get out here, whereas the white rhino is probably one of the oldest. So whilst they look quite similar, they've both got 2 horns as opposed to something like the greater one-horned or the Indian rhino that is in Asia. They suspect that they're very, very separate and distinct species, and so much so that their Latin names are completely separate. They don't even share a genus in terms of their level of connectedness. So something like a lion or a leopard would have the same genus. They are part of the Panthera family. Rhino, completely separate. So our black rhino and our white rhino. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of argument about the subspecies of the black rhino. There's a lot of different subspecies. There's articles that argue for 4, articles that argue for 8. And I mean, really, all in all, it's splitting hairs, but it is fascinating in its own way, just to know which of them it is. The unfortunate thing is, the more, this is going to sound depressing, and I said I'd veer away from this, and I will. The more subspecies that we have, the more subspecies we actually end up declaring extinct, like the western black rhino. It's something that I've always... black rhino are one of my favorite creatures in the world. They're completely nuts. They really are. They're loopy. They do the strangest things. Obviously, the scariest charge I've ever had in my life on foot was a black rhino. Her name was Elizabeth, and she was gorgeous, but not very friendly. So she charged us and stopped about 6 feet away from us. And I measured the track, so that's not like a sort of I caught a big fish kind of a story that just gets exaggerated every time. It really was 2 meters away from us that she turned, and they can turn on a dime. Very, very fast animals. You cannot outrun a rhino, but they are lovely. They're lovely to walk if you get it right, especially white rhino. They're quite placid. I've sat cross-legged for 20 minutes with a rhinoceros called Belega in an undisclosed time at an undisclosed location. Watched her suckle her calf for 20 minutes. We sat there probably about 60 or so feet away from her, and she was completely relaxed with us. Again, the white rhino is probably the creature that people underestimate the most. They assume they are very placid animals. They get habituated to people quite quickly on foot, until they don't. We had one very interesting sighting where we went out on a walk as all of us as guides, and we ended up sitting on a massive fallen knobthorn tree, watching the dynamics of the various rhino play out. And that comes into the family structures and the bonds between them. I'll tell you an interesting story about 2 white rhino siblings. And if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I promise you, I probably wouldn't have believed it. I would have thought that somebody was making this up, but I promise you it happened. It was 2 rhino called Xongile and Ilanga. Their mother was my favorite rhino, whose name was Notches, but that's a separate story. So Ilanga had just been kicked out by her mom because her mom had just had a calf, and she went off and she found her older brother Xongile, and she spent a lot of time with him, ultimately actually falling pregnant by him, unfortunately, but that does happen. Interbreeding with animals does occur. So Xongile was getting to about 7-8 years old, starting to show signs of dominance. And the one day we came out on a drive and we found Ilanga wrapped in a strand of copper wire. Where it came from, we don't know. It must have fallen off a construction vehicle, something like that. But she was wrapped all the way around her back legs. It had wrapped around here. It went up her body and then around her horns. So obviously we had to intervene. We had to get a vet out and a helicopter and catch them and dart them. So we darted her. She went down. Xongile ran off, and that we thought was the end of it. Everybody piled out of the vehicle because you've got to rush with a rhino darting. All dartings actually are usually quite a time-sensitive issue, but you don't want that animal to be injured. The next thing, this helicopter came zooming round and buzzed low over us. We thought it was buzzing us. I looked up, and Xongile was running full tilt at us. We'd all gathered round his fallen sister. He obviously decided that this was absolutely not on. This is his sister. It's his or potential mate. You know, she might have been coming into estrus. Either way, he was excessively protective, and he came charging towards us. Luckily, the helicopter pilot had seen it and buzzed him away. But it was a very interesting insight into sibling bonds. I then saw Xongile fighting one of the dominant males. And when rhino bulls fight, it can go on for weeks and weeks, and they'll spend most of the time making that bizarre noise that you heard earlier, squealing at each other, posturing, and then all of a sudden coming together in frantic blows and then separating again. And they can do themselves quite serious injury. And she stepped, not once, but 3 times in that sighting. She stepped in between her brother and the other male. I don't know why. I promise you it happened. I've got it on video somewhere. Absolutely no idea why she did it. I don't know if it was to do with her being an estrus, her instincts. I don't know what it was, but it was an interesting sighting that she stepped in between her brother and a rival male. The rhino have really, truly fascinating dynamics. I'm not sure if I've lost Rebecca or if she's still there. There she is. Found her. Now, Genevieve, you want to know if rhino have an alliance with any other species? Oxpeckers, just like buffalo and giraffe and all of the other antelope species, the larger antelope species. Rhino get these massive, massive ticks on them, particularly around the sensitive areas of their skin. So oxpeckers will gather around them. Other than that, not really. You'll see them together with other animals. Sometimes they're quite tolerant, sometimes they're not. I've seen rhino calves chasing impala for fun, but you'll see them sort of gathered. They don't really bother too much about the other species. I can't think of any other relationship that they have really apart from with each other. It's quite common to see white rhino and black rhino gathered around the same waterhole, and for the most part they tolerate each other. Sometimes you get a grumpy white rhino bull that might go and cause trouble with them. But for the most part, they really don't bother each other at all. That's the fascinating thing about them. Completely separate. Yes, absolutely, Dave. Rhino and elephants do get into confrontations. It actually does happen relatively regularly. A famous story, of course, was the Pilanesberg, where they brought in a group of traumatized elephants. And when the traumatized young bulls reached sexual maturity, they don't know whether it was an aggression thing or if it was to do with the bulls becoming sexually mature and just not behaving in a very odd way, but they killed quite a few rhino. That behavior was only stopped when they brought in a big bull elephant to come and teach the youngsters how to behave. And that's when they started to calm down, and it just relaxed their testosterone levels because it created a more natural environment for them. Rhino have been known to kill other animals as well. That famous picture of the rhino pulling the zebra foal out of the mud, that rhino's horn went straight through that zebra foal, and the zebra foal died. And it wasn't because it was I don't think it was because it was trying to save its life. I think it was because it was trying to move it out of its mud so that it could go and wallow there. So it does happen. They have been known to encounter elephants, and they have been known to be killed by them. It's quite a rare situation. Fortunately for us, we don't have a rare situation in that we get to see leopards all the time, but of course our favorites are the royals. Let's go and see them wandering on the road.
So indeed, they're still mobile down the road and moving straight eastwards. Now, I wonder where they're going to go from here. They have spent a lot of time in this area over the last few weeks. We're coming up towards the mud wallows where Xongile and Hosana lay for about a week they spent here. So I wonder if we're going to start heading northwards from there. But Karula is just steadily walking. Every time the cubs lie down, she just keeps going. So I'm sure she's taking them to something. Now, it's difficult to say if it's food or not, because obviously she's been feeding in the last few days, and so we don't know how much she's eaten and whether or not she killed something last night and was managed to get a little bit of food. But she's scent marking profusely as she goes along, and that would maybe indicate that she did have an altercation with another leopard, so she's just shoring up her boundaries. It's also, we've had a bit of rain, and so leopards often do this. After rain, they come and they will start marking heavily at areas where it's rain, just to get their scent again, to make sure that everybody knows that this is their area and where their territory lies. So that's what I'm sure is happening. Now, I'm hoping that she's going to turn northwards a little bit further, because we're still running parallel with the main road, and it really has been busy. There's been private vehicles and all kinds of things, so I'm hoping that they go north, just get a little bit quieter for us and for them as well. It's always nice if they don't have too many disruptions. So what I'm going to do is probably just go around them quickly, just to give Rexon behind us a chance to see them. We don't want to block up the sighting so that he can't see, so I'm going to try go around and see if I can get them coming towards us again. It was quite nice the last time they did. Now, the mud wallows that I was talking about are just here in front of me, so I'm hoping this is where they're going to come, and maybe they'll stop for a little drink. Although at the moment there's so much water around that they really don't need to worry about coming to a permanent water source. There's puddles on the roads and in the bush everywhere, and so it really is quite easy for them to drink. But what I'm hoping is that they're going to come this way. Let's see if we're right. Can't see around this bush, so I'm just going to edge forward. So there we go. Seems like they are coming this way, which is really, really good for us. I'm sure they're going to stop and drink at this pan that we have close by to us here. What did you do to your eye, my girl? Oh, little Xongile did scent mark now. Well done, girl. So I'm sure also these cubs know they're now right in the heart of their territory. They've come into an area where they've spent massive amounts of time, and that's why maybe Xongile is now confident enough to start marking as well. You can see she's rubbing her face, tail is up. And we've got little Hosana, who's also having a little grooming session with Karula at the moment. Now, he's such a bully at times, where he beats his mom up with his backside and pushes her around because of his size, but he can be such a sweet little cat as well. Like now when he lies with her and they have these little games, it really is quite something to watch. You can see he's getting a thorough cleaning. No doubt he was up to no good last night and is covered in ticks and grass seeds from running around, and that's why he's getting a good cleaning. But you can see there quite clearly how his head is almost bigger than Karula's these days. He's getting that really big, bulky male head that leopards get, and soon he's going to be way bigger than what she is. Xongile has still got a bit of catching up to do with Mom. She's still quite small in comparison. Like I was saying, you can see that cut underneath the eye. Now she's turned away. There's no actual blood coming out of it, so it's definitely healed up a little bit. I would imagine that she's had this at least for 3-4 days. Oh, Hosana, where are you going, my boy? Sorry. I would imagine Karula's going to follow shortly. Xongile is just lying behind us as well. So I'm just going to reposition ourselves so we've got a bit of a better view of things here, because we're at a bit of an awkward angle. So just got to be careful. There's a big tree stump on our left here. We don't want to drive into that.
Do you have comments?
No. So I'm not hearing Rebecca very well at all, so I'm hoping that she's trying. Ah, there we go. Welcome back, Rebecca. So, like I say, these overcast weather makes life a little bit difficult. So Rebecca says she's very happy to hear from us and that we can hear her. And I agree, Rebecca, it makes life a little bit easier when I can hear you. That's for sure. So they've just come and they're now lying at the edge of the mud wallow, and this has been their favorite place over the last week. The cubs have spent a lot of time. Unfortunately for them, well, I suppose it's not very hot today. The area that they were utilizing a few weeks ago before the cyclone came in, or the tropical storm should we call it, they had an area underneath a buffalo thorn that was perfect to sleep under, and that's all been flooded now. So now they've been relegated to the road. But like I say, lucky for them, there's not too much sun at the moment, and so it's a perfect place just to lie out on the road. There's no issues of getting too hot. So, Swapna, you want to know when Hosana will develop a dewlap? Well, it's normally when they start to become a little bit older, so as they start to become territorial, it starts to form, and really it's in full flush by the time they reach 7-8 years old. But you must remember with leopards that it's a genetic thing. Some males will end up with really big dewlaps and others not so big. Now, just watch. You see Hosana there? Look how him and Xongile have gotten low in the grass. They're hiding because Karula's now walking down the road, so I'm sure they're going to pounce on her as she comes. You'll see her coming into frame now. And so they think they're being very clever stalking her, but I think Mom has seen them, and you can see she's just rubbed up on Hosana. But his dewlap should probably start to be visible around sort of 5-6, and then it will just get bigger and bigger. And you can see Tingana, who's a much older male, his dewlap is massive now. If you compare that to Anderson, who is a little bit younger, Anderson is now probably about 7 or 8 years old. His dewlap is hardly noticeable in comparison to Tingana's, so it'll take a while still. He's not going to have a dewlap anytime soon, but I will tell you one thing, is he's going to be an impressive male. Just the size of him already is leaning towards going to be quite a big boy when he's older. He's going to be very stocky. I don't know how tall he's going to be, but he's going to be a very stocky, well-built male, much like what Tingana is. And it's funny, we always kind of compare Tingana to Anderson, and he's not quite as big, but Tingana is a massive male in his own right. If you had to have seen him in many areas, people would say he's huge. It's just that we get spoiled by seeing another male that is a little bit bigger, and we forget just how big Tingana actually is. But Hosana is being a typical teenage boy, not wanting Mom to groom him in any way, doing his own thing. Every time she tries to groom him, he just runs away or rolls over and now a little bit of a game with Xongile. They are so cute when they get into these moods, when they start to play. It's just unusual. Now, Karula's just slackening her thirst a little bit. I think it's been a long walk for her. She's obviously walked to go and fetch the cubs, and now is coming back to fetch them and then walk in this area. So Omar, you want to know how many male leopards there are in this area at the moment? Well, Omar, currently in terms of territorial males, we have the Anderson male who's in the far west, and then we have Tingana around Djuma, Gajima in the male, which is in the northern parts of Djuma into Buffel's Hook. Then there's Mvula, who's at the moment pretty nomadic, and he moves around this area. Then you've got Quarantine in the far east, the Shavambalan, the other male that's also in the east but hasn't been seen too much lately. And then Kanuma was seen a few times right in the southern parts, close to the Londolozi Mala boundary, and that is pretty much all the males that are territorial or at least big enough to be independent. In terms of males that are not independent, you've got Inkanyeni's young male, Vatumi, and then you have Tandi's young male, and you have Hosana. So those are the three young boys that are still with their moms at the moment. In the west, all the cubs so far are females, so there's no young males coming from that area. So that is our male leopards. Now, I didn't actually count how many there were, but it's a very healthy population, and competition is high at the moment for these leopards. But it's amazing. We actually checked this area this morning. This is exactly where we came to start our drive, and we were looking all around here, and where we're going now, it looks like we're going to go straight towards Treehouse Dam, which is, like I say, where we started our drive this morning. So we were just a little bit too early to catch them here, but luckily enough we found them pretty close to where Jamie had them last night, so it wasn't too difficult a search. Alright, so we're going to still carry on with them because I still have a sneaky suspicion we're going somewhere. And while we do that, let's go back to Brent, who I think has found himself all the way down on Cheetah Plains.
We've got some lapwings racing about, and the monotonous larks are going nuts. They must be loving this weather. What do you think they're saying, Vim? Brian said he thought they said... I can't remember what Brian said, but... I think they're saying, Cheetah! Nah, doesn't sound like Cheetah. Well... let's keep moving, hoping for Nkanyene or Vutomi. We know Quarantine's not around, or, of course, those male cheetah. Bethany wants to know if we ever see sugar birds in the area. We do not, Bethany. They occur at higher altitudes, and specifically, normally around where there's lots of aloes and proteas. So they don't occur on the low veld. They occur quite close to Hoedspruits, and they occur in the Drakensberg Mountains, the Gurney's sugar bird. Now, VM and I were just having a chat about lions, and we were saying, wouldn't it be so nice if a really big pride of lions just arrived from the Kruger? And that would be very exciting. If we're going to see them, it's going to be here.